Florence Villamino.
Hi, Jane.
Hello. We're going to start with left-leaning daily at Libération and a rather surprising headline from them.
That's right. They have a very colorful front page today. So what's going on with Libération? Well, they're actually paying tribute to the International Comics Festival, which is kicking off today in Angoulême. This is a very big deal here in France. So Libération is quite proud of it. And in fact, the whole paper is illustrated with comics. It's pretty cool. So check it out today.
All right, then. And the big focus, however, though, is on the French military operations in the Central African Republic on a bit more of a serious
That's right.
note.
Libération, it focuses on Opération Sangaris. Why is it off to such a bad start nearly 2 months after it began? And in fact, a lot of the French media is focusing on these errors of the war, as Libération calls them. And Libération points out that unlike in Mali, where there were successes quite immediately after the beginning of the operation, it seems like in the Central African Republic, the humanitarian situation on the ground has actually gotten worse since the French operation began. Libération points out that Paris was hoping for a quick operation, a shock and awe campaign, but the situation on the ground is much more complicated than they anticipated. And Libération interviews Peter Bouckaert today, who's on a mission from Human Rights Watch in Bangui, and he says that French soldiers they're facing an unexpected resistance on the ground, and they're really getting bogged down. A lot of the soldiers say it's not really clear exactly who they're fighting against, and this is really becoming a quagmire for French troops, so much so that they feel somewhat paralyzed, and he says that they often actually don't even leave their armored vehicles.
Okay, and according to L'Opinion, the international community is paying close attention to those atrocities being committed on the ground.
That's right. L'Opinion says that troublemakers are in the UN's crosshairs, and this comes after the UN Security Council unanimously adopted a new resolution this week, which actually establishes a regime of targeted sanctions against individuals that are trying to destabilize the country. And L'Opinion points out that on top of that, the International Criminal Court is exploring ways to prosecute those responsible for crimes against humanity and war crimes.
Okay, and Le Parisien, meanwhile, is focused on French citizens waging a different war, not their own one.
Not their own one, that's right. Le Parisien and a lot of other French papers are focused on French citizens that have gone to Syria to fight in the civil war there. And according to Le Parisien, about 700 French people or foreigners living in France have reportedly gone to fight in Syria. They call it a one-way ticket for jihad. And there's actually a map in Le Parisien which shows their path into Syria, usually via Turkey. And Le Parisien points out that on top of the 700 fighters from France, there are fighters from Belgium, the Netherlands, Denmark. In total, between 10,000 and 12,000 foreign jihadists are fighting in Syria.
Okay, and Le Parisien also explains how these foreigners are recruited, doesn't it?
That's right. It's mainly happening online. According to Le Parisien, specialists that they interview say that there's an unprecedented level of brainwashing going on online, especially on social media. And that's why it can explain why so many young people have decided to go and fight in Syria, why there's this spontaneous jihad generation, as Le Parisien calls it. So Le Parisien wonders, what actually do they do once they get to Syria? And it points out that, their dream of waging jihad sometimes doesn't actually come true. According to intelligence agencies, for instance, it's often a cold shower for these young kids. They usually start out by doing subordinate work like cooking or repair work, etc., especially if they don't speak Arabic. And sometimes, though, however, they are trained to fight and go to the front line. And Le Parisien points out that so far 19 young French people have died in Syria. So Atlantico wonders, what's the appeal? Why are all these young French people wanting to go to Syria? It wonders if all this isn't just part of some sort of teenage rebellion, or young people becoming jihadists like they once upon a time became punks.
Interesting. It's the same question that intelligence services across Europe are perhaps asking themselves. They're trying to do their best to monitor these individuals, aren't
That's
they?
right. And in fact, a lot of these fighters are being tried when they come back to France. For instance, today, 3 French jihadists are going to go on trial. They didn't actually make it into Syria. They were arrested before they could fly to Turkey. But Libération points out how other European countries are dealing with these jihadist fighters, and points out that in the Netherlands, for instance, actually, these fighters aren't arrested upon their return. The authorities actually help them. They find jobs for them, help them find houses, etc., try to reintegrate them into society. So while France is rather repressive, it seems like the Netherlands is rather taking care of them.
Oh, it's a fascinating story. Thanks very much for that look at what the French papers are reporting today, Florence Villamino. We're going to take a short break, but stay with us. When we come back, we'll have a special report as a number of young people, as we just said, leaving Europe to join the battle to fight in the Syrian war continues to grow. Our correspondents ask why and talk to the families left behind. That's coming up in our Focus segment.